Party people, welcome once again to the Party of One podcast, the actual play RPG podcast where the gaming table is always set for two. I'm your host as always, Jeff Stormer. This week on the show, I am joined by Carlos Cisco for a game of Grasping Nettles. Grasping Nettles is a storytelling world-building game for 1 to 6 players about a community changing over the course of several generations. Players take turns dictating elements of this community as well as how they change and evolve over time. Periodically, you press pause, skip forward a generation, and see how time has impacted the community as a whole. The game is cool as hell. It's got this wonderful sort of board game mechanic. It is rich and beautiful, and the stories that you tell are vivid and real, and you create these really in-depth, wonderful communities. This game's... Hey everybody, President Jeff here with a quick statement that we stand in complete solidarity with our friends in the WGA and SAG-AFTRA unions as they strike, fighting for better working conditions and a better, more equitable path forward in the industry. We stand in complete solidarity, which means that we will not be taking or promoting any struck work during the duration of the strike. And of course, the best way, if you would like to support the strike, is by donating to the Entertainment Community Fund, which supports individuals whose work has been put on hold due to the strike. Anyone who donates to the Entertainment Community Fund can send me proof of a donation of any amount. I will send you an exclusive, secret, never-released Party of One episode, as well as a digital version of any single one of my games, your choice. Thanks, everybody. Solidarity forever. Oh, so cool. I really, really love it. You can find more information about Grasping Nettles at adamebell.itch.io, or you can check the show notes for more information. Carlos is a writer of TV and film, as well as a game designer whose work has appeared in things like Star Trek Adventures, iHunt, and Arcadia. You can find him on Twitter at Carlos_Cisco. Carlos is also a WGA strike captain. And as you've probably heard on every episode that you've listened to since May, this is something that we strongly support. We appreciate all the work that Carlos is doing. And Carlos has asked us in the intro of this episode to promote the Entertainment Community Fund, which supports both striking workers as well as crew members on productions that have been struck by the strike. If you've got the money to spare, I encourage you to donate to the Entertainment Community Fund. It's a great way to help people fighting for a better future for not just their industry, but really all industries. And also, if you send me a proof of a donation of any amount, I will send you an exclusive Lost Party of One episode as well as a digital game of your choice. So that's a win-win. And with all that said, let's go ahead and throw it over to me in the past so that he can get started with the show. Take it past me. Thanks, future me. I'm so excited to be sitting down with Carlos Cisco today. Carlos, thank you so much for coming on Party of One.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm really, really happy to be here. I really love the show.
I'm so happy to hear that. That really does mean a lot. So at the top of the episode, before we kick things off, why don't you take a moment to let our lovely listeners at home know about anything you've got going on that you might want them to know about?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a sort of multifaceted creative. I'm a television writer, but also a game designer. Currently, it's kind of wild. As of this recording, on Friday, the 28th, a movie that I wrote, but then was rewritten, but I kept a story by credit, so, it still counts, is coming out in theaters, which feels really wild in an age where everything just sort of defaults to streaming. So that's like really exciting.
That's cool as hell.
So those are the big things in the pipe. There's a few things I under the veil of NDA, but that's kind of the current stuff.
That's so cool. I genuinely and truly, those are both the coolest goddamn things that like my day has been made. Just know it. Like, I'm excited. I'm happy to hear about this. And so today we are going to be playing a very exciting game. We are playing Grasping Nettles, which is a game about a community and the way that community changes over generations. We have a board in front of us that has various world building things that we are going to engage with one piece at a time. And as we do that, we are going to pass through this community over generations and sort of dictate the way that this community changes over time. The 4 pillars of this game are that we are going to create a community. A community is not a monolith and is going to have different factions that influence it. This community is going to face issues big and small, and clean solutions do not exist. In this community live notable people about whom stories will be told, and just as many working towards great things without a level of recognition. And the community lasts longer than any individual person, and their legacies may linger, but generations will move on. That's the core of the game, but really we're just going to be fleshing out the pieces of this community kind of one thing at a time. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this game all day.
It's really, really cool.
So yeah, we've got this board in front of us. It's got different actions that we can take depending on where we land on our turn. We're going to kind of move around the board game style. each tile on the board corresponds to a different type of action, and we are going to kind of dictate what we're going to flesh out our community and set scenes and tell stories as that happens. But first we have to decide what our community is. So we're going to start by talking through what vibe, what genre vibe, what's the things that are in our head to kind of flesh out the world. Once we've landed on a community, then we will start to define what the factions are within that community, and then we'll start playing through the game proper. So let me ask you, what's on you? What vibes, genres, settings? What's on your mind recently? What's on the top of your head?
Okay, so this might even be too specific already, but I had a thought in the shower before getting in here, and I was like, this sounds interesting, but also maybe kind of gross.
I'm interested. You're speaking my language.
So I'm thinking of a community on a planet, kind of like Coruscant, like that is a
Sure.
city-wide planet. But this community exists beneath the planet, riding on sewer barges, cleaning the waste created by this planet-sized city. Because if they don't, everyone will die, because it's highly toxic. There's a lot of waste coming out of, and not just like people waste. I'm talking industrial waste, maybe magical waste. Who knows? I don't know what sort of world this is just yet. But I was thinking about something like that, like people who exist on like a city-sized barge, traveling on like rivers of muck beneath a planet.
Now, can I take this a step even further?
Please do.
Because when you were describing it, like you had said the sentence, imagine the planet, and my head went to a specific thing that mapped out perfectly to everything else you were saying, while taking it in a different, in a weird direction. When you said imagine the planet, the first place my brain went was the asteroid from The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
And so in my head, I was like, what if it's like what if it is literally a planet-sized organism? It is an ego, the living planet, but like inside of that, so that like the tunnels are the interiors of a living thing, and the waste cleanup.
I'm really glad you said that, because that was really where I wanted to go with it, but I was like, okay, that may be one step too far.
No, the inside,
great, let's do that.
Like, yeah, the idea of like, I'm such a sucker for the idea of like playing with themes of scale, and that idea that like this world is what we perceive as a planet is itself like a living thing, and we are the
cleaner wrasse.
Yeah, the barnacles on the bottom of a whale, except the whale is the size of a planet, is like the coolest thing in the world. Yeah. That's the vibe that I think that's incredibly compelling to me. And the idea that they are these like organic, and then there's like a Russian doll effect, right? Because if we're picturing barges, it almost screams for, it's like we ride on a second smaller giant organism. Like we are on the backs of a turtle, which rides along the veins of a giant whale, and we are the people that like hop off and like gather up waste and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there would be all manner of horrible creatures that live inside some sort of digestive tract of a planet.
That's the greatest. That rules a lot. And yeah, like that idea of like it's cleanup. It is cleaning. It is cleanup. It is also like, for like this is I think the grossest that we'll get. Because I think that like once we zoom in on scale, it will stop being gross a little bit. But like foraging and like, like gathering, like I'm picturing like hunting for like amoeba and shit, and like that's like compelling to me.
Oh yeah, I think like the sorts of like bacteria that exist inside of this thing. It's like that episode of the Magic School Bus. Only like these people are in like gas masks and wielding spears and shit.
That's cool as shit. That rules. That's fantastic. I'm into this. All right. Then we have already landed on like what our community is. We've got an idea of the premise. I think that like in terms of scope, I really think this is one of these sort of like turtle barges. This is like one of these like it's not quite a family. It's not. It's large. It's what you would envision. Like it's like and not everyone is a blood relative, but it's not so large that it is like a city in its own right. Like it is a small community. Each of these organisms hosts like a small community that
Yeah,
makes
I
its
would
way
probably
on
say
its
it's
back.
like 100 or less people,
That
like
feels that feels good. That feels good.
sort of so it's very small town vibe living on these whatever creature they happen to be living on, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I think like because of that, there are a lot of petty internal politics
Oh yeah,
with these types of places. It's like any small town.
it's a lot of the detail that I want to throw out. The sort of immediate conflict detail that I want to throw in is it's a lot of the small town vibe that is extremely true to my own small town upbringing. It's a lot of small time family businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a lot of like we both own the auto shop in town and we do not get along.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like these whatever beings I don't know if we're necessarily dealing with humans or whatever, but like the people that live on these things, I imagine like they are both in some ways scorned by a maybe more established sedentary populace, but also essential because they are like the traders. They bring in resources and stuff from deeper within this creature
Mm-hmm.
that other people don't have access to. So I think like it's like they're the stinky traders.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. All right, so then we've got our community in place. It's on one of these barges. It's on one of these like floating sort of like almost like floating turtle things is what I'm envisioning. A little bit of a Lapras from Pokemon, a little bit of a giant turtle.
Okay, what if
Some
let me just yes and you on this. What if instead of a turtle, it's like a hard shell or hard top jellyfish?
Oh, that's sick as fuck. Yes, that's cool. That rules. I like that. Yeah, that's cool because then you got the little like tentacles floating
Yeah,
beneath
they
and it
can
kind
gather things from that and stuff like yeah.
Yeah, and the detail that I want to add to that, because I think it's really compelling thinking about the way that jellyfish move is like the way that like time scales differently at different sizes means that when this thing jumps, right? When it puffs up, it shoots the air out from underneath, and it sort of that is a very much a like that is to the jellyfish, it is just moving from section to section. To our community, that is sort of the like almost changing of the season. Like, oh shit, we gotta go. Like that
Yeah,
is our moment of like,
it's like hurricane season. You got to strap. It's like hurricane and earthquake season at the same time. You got to strap everything down.
yeah,
You got to batten down the hatches of your houses and stuff like that because things are moving.
yeah, and you got like you know when it's good. Like you get the signs that the jellyfish is gonna move, and then it's well, all right, batten things down, say your goodbyes, and get ready to arrive at a different place.
Mm-hmm.
That's sick. I like that. Okay, great. So, how this is going to work? We are going to, we have three factions. I've made them. We have a mirror board in front of us. We have a circle, a square, and a triangle. How this is going to work is we are going to start the game. The first three things that we're going to do is we're going to go back and forth and define one of the factions that make up this community that we're on. Once we outline a faction, we will write it down on our faction key, and then we'll place them on the board on the faction tile. Once we've outlined all three factions, then we'll start rolling dice and sort of like allow the dice results and the places on the board that we land on to dictate where we end up. So my question is, do you have an idea for a faction, or do you like me to outline the first one?
So I have an idea. I think that this is like thinking about just that small town vibe. This is probably the oldest family
Mm.
that lives on this creature, and they have for many years sort of claimed navigation rights.
Ooh.
But the sort of like the underlying, hidden family secret is that like a jellyfish just goes where it wants.
Right.
So they've sort of fancied themselves the leadership, but it's kind of built on a bit of a shaky foundation.
I like that. I really like that. Which of the three factions? Which of the three shapes do you want
the triangle?
All right, we'll put the triangle on the board, and then if you want to write down a quick note about that next to the triangle on our faction key,
Okay.
I will start to think through. I am a sucker. I've been thinking about this, and the vibe that I want to immediately throw a I want to throw an immediate vibe of I love a good organized crime family, and the idea of an organized crime family in a small town is very, very rich and compelling to me. I like the idea that there is a family that like is what I would describe as like what's even the words that I'm trying to find to describe this. They are the family that if you need something, they hook you up with it. Just don't ask how they got it. You know what I mean? They are like, then don't like they are. Everybody kind of knows the deal with them. Everybody kind of knows that they are frightening, that they are not, that they are like a family of people that work in illicit things. But for the most part, like it is very much one of those, like, if you come to me with a request, I will fulfill it. Just don't ask where it comes from.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
okay.
I'm going to put this on the circle.
So to yes and on that, which I think in the third faction maybe, this is the sort of like spiritual heart of this place, and let's call them the sacrament of the sacred flesh.
That's
and like
really good.
One of their tenets is that like you cannot consume the flesh of the planet.
Mm.
Because this world is sacred. So maybe that's like, and maybe there are some sort of properties like the specific like planet meat, not just like stuff we scrape off and things like that. The actual like tender victuals of the planet.
Yeah.
But that may be something that the organized crime family sells.
Oh, I really like that. That's really great. Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that. Okay, so we've outlined our three factions. Let me see if there's anything else that we need to do on the faction action. I don't believe that there is. All right, so we've got our three factions. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take turns. We're going to roll a d6. We're going to move our pieces. We're going to choose a faction and move those pieces. Yeah, you're going to choose one of the three factions. You're going to roll a die. You're going to move the die you're going to move the piece that many pieces, that many spaces along the board. You can move it orthogonally, so you can move it to any space that it touches, or that like it shares a board, or that it shares like a side with. You can't move it counterclockwise, so you can't go backwards, and you can't go back to a space that you just landed on.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'm going to roll my d6. I got a 6. So I'm going to grab the Mud Gripper family. I'm going to go one. I'm going to grab my piece. I'm going to take it to 1 to scene, 2 to location, 3 to project, 4 to piece, 5 to event, and 1 to issue, or 6 to issue. I'm going to land us on issue. So we are going to, our first turn is going to be an issue. We're going to make a mess of the world. Something big that can be felt across the whole world as we know it. It should be a problem for the active faction, but can be everyone else's problem as well. As these things happen, we're just going to take note cards, and just drop them onto the board so that we have an idea of like what things are. It's going to form a little bit of a living map of our thing. This issue is... this is really interesting to think about from like a time perspective. If we perceive time a little bit differently because of the size differential between us and the jellyfish, I am going to write down our jellyfish. Our jellyfish is fighting another jellyfish.
Oh, no. Is there another city on this jellyfish?
Our jellyfish is fighting another jellyfish. I'm going to say there is another city on this jellyfish.
But that
And
is incidental to the fight that's going on, right?
yeah. It is a fight between the jellyfish, and I think both of our cities are baffled. I don't think that there is a record, and I think that this is a problem for the Mud Gripper family specifically because, like, as the eldest family on the jellyfish, a lot of people are turning to the family and saying, hey, what do we do? What has happened in the past? And there is no record. And then also there's a lot of people turning to the family and saying, get us the hell out of here. And we can't. Like, the family cannot physically get the jellyfish out of here, but like the two jellyfish are in a fight, which is never to our records happened before.
I love it. I love it. I also I'm glad that it's like the sort of like neither town knows what's happening. I also would have loved it if you had gone in the high school football direction and both were sort of cheering on their jellyfish. Very but I like the sort of like the problem of nobody knows what to do. This has never happened.
I am going to take an element of that. And specifically go literally high school football and say that because like we are in such close proximity and in such a like surprisingly long amount of time that like a literal local sports rivalry is broken out, and like there has been a decent number of like groups going from one jellyfish to the other for sports contests and various things, and like a literal small town rivalry has broken out with like the neighboring jellyfish, where we're playing whatever the intestinal equivalent of football is, just like sending teams back and forth and trash talking.
Nice. Love that. All right. So do I roll?
Yes.
Right. I have a die here as well. I got a 1. So I'm going to do the Sacrament of Sacred Flesh on location.
So describe a new location in the community or modify an existing one, give it a name, narrate an overview of its size, its use or non-use, and where it is in relation to the rest of the locations. So I guess introduce us to a place and tell us what is significant about it.
So I think the sort of like the heart of this town is this temple that's really literally at the center of the community, and I think it's built from organic materials, probably like mostly like bones, and tanned awful skin from this place, and so it's this like I think like spiraling sort of structure that kind of goes off into a spire at the top of the at the kind of like the highest building on the top of the jellyfish, and it's where everyone sort of takes their their daily rites, and I think they do probably a lot of feeding of the community so that they can monitor the diets of people. So that they know that they're not eating.
I like that.
So make a sticky note. Say green.
All right, then I'm gonna roll a d6. That is also a 1. So I'm not gonna. And instead of going for a location, I am going to grab the small town organized crime family, and I'm gonna describe a scene. Is what I think I'm going to call for. Select an existing note card and zoom in on something specific happening with it. Refer to setting scenes rules for full details. So we are zooming in on a piece of this, and we're going to learn a little bit more about it. We can dive into like character roleplay. We can stay zoomed out and just describe the details around it, but we're just going to kind of like play around, use our combination of roleplay and narration to kind of like describe this. I actually really want to know more, and I want to know more about how this relates to the small town organized crime family. I gotta know more about like this small town rivalry that is broken out, is what I think. I really gotta know like what the specifics of it and like how this crime family is factoring into it.
So I think that the crime family maybe have they started like a betting ring around the sort of two teams that has sort of, I mean, I don't want to say it's like gotten out of hand, but it's like it's really sweeping up both towns in it, and they're really profiting. But well, I don't know how deep we want to get
I
into.
like
Yeah.
I like that. I think that the other really big thing that like I think has developed, and I think that keeping this high level is good, but like I think the other thing that has developed is like the existence of this betting ring as I mean, it is, the nature of capitalism impacting a thing, right? Like this changed it from a hey, we're all in a weird bad situation together to suddenly individual members of both communities are profiting off of it, and suddenly like now the games have changed. Like we see a change in in these games from like being kind of rowdy,
Yeah,
loud.
the competition has gotten a little more dangerous.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Like you're seeing the individual athletes like put themselves in danger because suddenly there is a financial incentive to do so.
I love it.
I like that a lot. All right, give us the dice roll and move a faction.
5. Okay. I'm gonna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go to event.
All right, so something big has happened. It could be a festival, a holiday, or anything that reverberates through generations. The important thing that's different between this and the issue action is this doesn't create a problem, but just changes the world in an interesting way.
Okay, so I don't know if this like necessarily like resolve like if we can resolve issues this way, but I think that the thing that changes is that the jellyfish stopped fighting and their bodies actually fuse together, combining the two communities.
Oh, damn.
And so now there is only just like a small sort of divot, like which, for them, it's probably like a 30-foot sort of crevasse between the two jellyfishes where the sort of the seam is that they've built like a bridge. But, it's largely a cause for celebration because the fighting between these two, sort of cosmic entities that they live on has stopped, which is sort of like stopped the disruption. And it's also kind of brought their communities together, even though there are still problems, like they're stronger, they're bigger. So I think that like that's a thing that becomes celebrated every year, every generation, or something like that.
And I think that the complicating factor in that, as I envision it, is like, especially because like the piece that landed there was the crime family. Like I imagine that is a
the balance of power has shifted because they were a lot more, and that like the crime family got a lot more entrenched with the other side.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Like, yeah, like that idea of like now suddenly like they've had good interactions with people on both sides of the crevasse, and so like it is suddenly less of a shifty, less of a family with a secret, and now much more of an active kind of syndicate that has crossed the crevasse and sort of like grown across this entire sort of dual community.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I really love that. So I am going to roll, and I am going to grab hold of the Sacrament of the Sacred Flesh. And that is 3. So I can bring it to, I can go project. I'm going to bring to peace. What does peace bring us? Change the active faction of the piece that just landed here to one of the other factions not currently mapped. Okay, so this is interesting. This is really interesting. The Sacrament of the Sacred Flesh remains a faction, but they are no longer one of the active factions. They can come back. They can come back later by landing on the peace square, but currently they are, and this is super interesting for the event that just happened.
Yeah, no, I definitely can see that. Yeah.
Because I think that means that like a faction from this other community has taken on like a really prominent role in the new power balance of the world. And I think that is um I'm gonna go with what's the name that I want to throw out here? It's Cell and Sons Bioengineering. And what that is literally a like it is literally they specialize, and this is something that was unique to the other jellyfish that wasn't really on our original jellyfish. They specialize in like bioengineering and sort of like biomechanical things that can be like, that use sort of that inherent electric charge that is in a jellyfish to make things. And suddenly like that weird little local niche has spread to the other jellyfish and really like made them like an active faction, because suddenly, oh yeah, we can plug all kinds of things into the weird sort of goo flaps of a jellyfish to make like electricity things erupt in ways that we've never done before. And that's just dramatically changed the living of the community at large. Suddenly everybody is buying little electrical doohickeys and pieces of harvesting equipment that's just changed the nature of things. And suddenly Cell and Sons bioengineering, which was very much you know a dad and two sons out of a garage, has like opened up a genuine storefront that like is suddenly a mover and shaker, and that has brought a lot of attention.
Cool. So we got to put that on the piece. Another one. Okay. I guess I'm just going to move this guy one. So this is, I'm going to do a glimpse, which is a brief picture of a place outside your community, somewhere else in the world. A glimpse add context to the broader world of your story. I'm going to say that the sort of like the central hub city of this planet is something like deep within it. That this is, I think, like a planet that doesn't have much surface life. But it has a very rich interior. This living planet, and so this is the city of Ossuary, and it is this city that similarly, like how these people have learned to bioengineer this jellyfish, they have learned to grow the bones of the planet. In ways to like shape them. So the city is entirely within this sort of like, artificial skeletal structure that they've created. So that's like the primary like trading hub that people would, our people would go to.
And the one sentence detail that I'm going to add to that, and then we're going to end our glimpse, is I think there is this trading hub, this is central place where all of this is happening. I'm going to say that this is unbeknownst to either of our small town communities, like there is like an act or like a moment of, there is like a big dramatic moment of unrest, whether that is like an election, whether that is a political schism is happening. Like that hub is in a marked state of strife, distress, and change. And we see that at every level of this like central trading hub community.
Great. I love that.
Yeah, and it's just the thing that's happening off to the side. So all right,
and it's not something that our people are aware of at all.
Right, exactly. All right, let me roll the dice. I got a 2. I'm going to make a big play here.
Okay.
Because I think we set up a lot of interesting things, and I'm going to immediately hit the fast forward button. I'm dropping us onto the generation space.
So is that okay, gotcha. I see how that does. Yeah.
So when we land on the generation space, that faction piece can no longer be moved during this generation. Describe how that active faction fades to a more background role for the time being. When all space pieces land on this space, follow the generation changes steps. So I like this. I like this a lot. In my head, I was thinking that moved the entire generation forward, but I like moving just the crime family. We've seen a lot of them over so far, and I think this the with the place that they have been, right, where we said that they shifted that balance of power and they became sort of like a crucial piece of the infrastructure. It's sort of terrifying, but also really captivating to imagine that means that they just fade into the background, right? Like that just becomes, it changes to a much larger and in some ways scarier version of if you need something, go talk to the family of like, yeah, everybody has struck a deal with this crime family once upon a time, right? Like it's just the nature of living on the jellyfish at this point. They are just a fabric of life.
Yeah, it's like they're less a power base and more just the base. Like the baseline, like it's sort of like when there are big societal shifts and something just calcifies into daily life, whether it is unpleasant or not.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and
sort of they're there.
I went ahead and just named them the Wall Walker family because I like the idea that they were a family that came to prominence because they were like walking along the walls of these various like organs gathering things that gives them an opportunity to open up for that kind of like, we have been ripping meat off of the walls of this organism that we live on and selling it. And so like that's the family. And yeah, they just became, everyone has struck a deal with the Wall Walkers at some point or another. It's just the family that you deal with when you want something to happen.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I can do it. Let's see. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make another big move things along just as quickly as they came onto the scene. Cell & Sons Bioengineering. I think like kind of what happens is as the sort of crime family, as the Wall Walkers sort of metastasize throughout and kind of legitimize themselves, they buy up Cell & Sons Bioengineering. They just buy them out of their stuff, and it just becomes it's Callahan Motors now owned by the massive corp. Even though this is maybe 200 people, but it's I think like the what was once an independent family controlled thing is now sort of been gobbled up by this larger crime family.
I like that. I really, really love that.
Still around, but they don't, they're sort of enjoying the fruits of their sale.
All right. I have rolled a 3, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 and put the Mud Gripper family on a project, which is very compelling. A project is it's something, there's an issue that the family wants to deal with, and we're going to start that project but not revolve it. So I'm going to name what they're working on. And I think what the Mud Gripper family is working on specifically is, I am going to say, because I think that like a possibility for the Mud Gripper family has opened up in the time since in the months since the jellyfish merged. They've been developing an actual navigational system. Like now that they have these sort of biomechanical pieces, and now that Cell & Sons Bioengineering has become such a prominent thing, there's an opportunity to and there's a sense of like, I think it really shook the family to the core, right? Like that, the sense of like, we didn't know why the jellyfish were fighting. We didn't know that they could merge. We didn't know that they were going to interact with each other. Like there is a sense of like, a reactive sense of like, we need to use the technology and get the people into the room to tell us how we can predict these things better. But there's also sort of a power grab mentality of, if we could do that, well, then we could become we could, firm up our legacy even greater and hold an even greater place in the community at all. Or peer across the world.
Nice. All right. Well, I rolled a 4. So that actually gives me a really good idea if I move us to back to generation on this to sort
Yeah.
of like close out these factions is the development of the actual navigation system was sort of like both like the key to sealing their legacy, but also their irrelevance. Because of the jellyfish fight, they hadn't moved for several, generations, birthing cycles. Like there are several kids who have never been to Ossuary City for the trades, and so deciding that now that they have this navigation system, they're going to go straight there because there are kids and adults that have never been there, and those younger generations are so struck with this place that they decide to leave.
Ooh.
And so the community that's left is an aging or elderly one with no real sort of sense of identity or leadership.
I love that. I really, really love that. And so that brings us to a generation change. That brings us to the next generation of our community. So how this is going to work, we have some note cards on the table. We are going to decide how far ahead into the future we want to go, what we want to define as like a generation skip. Then we're going to look at each of these cards and address how the generation skip reflects each of the things that have been written on here. So how far ahead do we want, like, how far ahead do you want to look ahead? Do you want to do like just another generation birthing cycle? Do you want to skip ahead further? What do you envision as like the time skip that we're experiencing?
I think it's 2 generations after people like most of the youth have left these jellyfish cities.
Okay. I like that.
So those that are left are like staunch traditionalists, or cultural preservationists, kind of on both sides of it. Like there are people who are bitter about it, angry that sort of their way of life has disappeared, but there are also people who are working to preserve it actively and hopefully because they recognize its necessity.
Yeah.
As a result, maybe the planet is starting to sort of decay from the inside.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That's sick. Okay, so we've got this picture of where we are in the present. We've skipped ahead 2 generations. Great deals of the youth have left. The planet itself is becoming sick and decaying on the inside. And now we're going to look at how our community has changed. We're going to go through all of the things that we have on the table, the factions, the note cards. One by one, we're going to dictate how those things have changed over these 2 generations. I would love to take the first one if that's all right, because I have a really good idea based on what you just said. I'm going to change the Mud Gripper family to the Mud Gripper Society.
Ooh.
It is a much different kind of power grab. They have become like they are no longer just the Mud Gripper family. Like it is also the affiliated elder families of the jellyfish have become this sort of historical preservation society. They have sort of taken to opening up museums and lecture halls and, building spaces to, like, as they put it, preserve our history. But what they really mean is like writing. This is a group that is dedicated to creating the narrative of the history of our community, often for political ends.
Nice. Okay, so I'm going to go with the Sacrament of Sacred Flesh. I would say that they truly faded into obscurity because, within the sort of like the walls of this city, there are all manner of cosmopolitan delights and temptations and, experiences. And I think that this was a sort of like a spiritual system that was built around the sort of like cycle of survival that they lived under, and it's no longer necessary in the current state of things.
I like that. I really love that. I am going to alter the note card about the jellyfish have moved and the communities because I think that like it's been long enough where there are no longer there like it's no longer feels like there are two jellyfish that have merged. Even the crevasse has become sort of a I think what it is like it's very much sort of a cliffside park almost. Like there are little tunnels that have been dug into along the crevasse where the two jellyfish once merged. And it no longer like the idea that this was a thing that happened is more of a local curiosity as the community has just become like enough blending has occurred where like the community is just the community now. Like the people that like if you ask someone, if you ask a member of the youth, right, if you ask a young person today to go to like East Jellyfish, that means nothing. That just means like going over. It would be no different than saying from going to Brooklyn or Queens, right? Like, or it means no different than going from one neighborhood to the next. It is just there. It's just the other neighborhood in town. Whereas older members of the community, that mud gripper society, are like, I remember when we were separate entities and you could not get from one to the other. Like it is just they have sort of just become neighborhoods in a city.
Um, so I'm going to go with the developing an actual navigation system and say that this system proliferated, which caused a mass exodus from the jellyfish worldwide. So
I
it's
like
the
that.
unintended consequences of developing technology.
I like that. Along the same lines, I'm looking at a betting ring has erupted. Sports betting made it to the hub. I'm specifically envisioning, like a moment in time, that I find fascinating from like a real world. This is a real world moment in time that I find interesting. The moment I'm specifically like the moment when like DraftKings became a thing that everyone had on their phone. It is that idea that like it stopped being a thing that you kind of had to talk to someone about and
Uh-huh.
just became a thing that became like a big business. Like it made it to the central trade hub. The youth kind of brought their rivalries and their betting practices and their sports pools. And now it's like big business, right? And now it is formal. It has, you know, taken hold in sort of all of the different sports and activities. Everybody talks about stats and numbers and performance, and it is just this very big, very broad thing, very similar to the Wall Walker family. Like it just became a thing that everybody interacts with. It used to be a thing that you had to kind of seek out, and now it is just out in the air.
Nice. Um, so I think like with the Temple of Bones, that community center sort of became the first museum.
Oh, I love that. I am going to change the card. I'm going to change our jellyfish is fighting another jellyfish. I think as the biochemistry of the world that we inhabit has changed, jellyfish fights have become common. They have
Ooh,
become it is something that has become frequent. It was a one-time scary thing that has become frighteningly common, and as a result of that, like protocols have been established for this is what it's going to look like if our city starts fighting another city.
nice. And so I think with the, like the political schisms that come in, that it's sort of like both exasperated and solved by the influx of these new communities,
Hmm.
bringing sort of a different perspective on things. And I think because there are so many of them that end up moving into this city, essentially the sort of like the power shifts within the city to the people who have like more recent arrivals, or at least the interests of more recent arrivals at heart. Uh,
Hmm.
which I'm sure people are very, very happy about.
Oh, I'm sure they're thrilled, and especially because I know exactly the next thing. Um, Cell and Sons Bioengineering has become BioCell, an industrial engineering and research conglomerate. Like they got an influx of money from the Wall Walkers. They got bought out. They bought out two other garages, and now much of this jellyfish to the changing makeup of the community, the changing needs, addressing the people that were now coming in. Much of this community has become sort of this like technical development sort of like research hub, and they grew elaborate, and it became this very, very big thing. They are now the looming presence on the edge of town, that is scary and ominous.
Nice. I think is that all our
I
cards?
believe the only one left is how has the Wall Walker family changed over the generations?
Oh, I think they probably, you know, they, I would imagine, like any sort of entrenched crime family that suddenly is forced to change or adapt, they probably died out because I would imagine a lot of like there are much more entrenched bases of power in that city. Um, and without sort of the like critical mass of people on the jellyfish, they didn't really have a way to make a profit or money or whatever they're making. So I think they had to move to the city, and they sort of got swallowed up in it.
I love that. I love that. So we're going to be so bold as to take them off of the board,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to leave them. We're gonna put them blank, and I'm gonna say, do we have an idea of a faction we want to replace them with? Actually, for now, we'll move the Sacrament to their place as the active faction because we have three factions.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we come up with another faction during play, we will replace the Circle. I love this. Okay. And now with that, we go through and we continue rolling dice and mapping out what the factions look like.
Nice. Okay.
Would you like to roll first or should I?
Sure. Yeah, I'll roll. 2. So I'm going to go with the irrelevant sacrament of the sacred flesh, and I got a 2. Go to location. So the remaining members that sort of still ascribe to this belief system have found their temple sort of reclaimed for other reasons, and have made their home in the like sort of like pockets of the underside of the jellyfish, and are now eating of its flesh, sort of slowly hollowing out our jellyfish from the inside.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that. I really love that. All right, I'm gonna roll my dice. I got a 4. I'm gonna move BioCell to season. I'm gonna move BioCell to the season square. What happens on a season? Change the current season. Seasons in Grasping Nettles should be understood broadly, whether they are weather like spring or summer. They can also be something cultural like Fashion Week or Trumpet Season. We have not outlined any seasons, and I like that this is a significant season in. I'm gonna write down I like the idea. I'm writing down influx, and I like the idea that it is quite literally a little bit of bio grossness. This is literally the feeding season of the giant dragon that we are in, the space whale that is the planet. This is the space whales, like this is when it eats. So it is literally a massive influx of material of all kinds, organic, the organic, inorganic, mechanical. Like it is an influx of stuff.
Love it.
And that just means that literally in the air around us, on the walls around us, there is just a bounty of objects just like surrounding us. And it is kind of interesting. And it is just a time when a lot of stuff is happening across the jellyfish.
Cool. 1. Ooh, all right. So a new faction.
What's our faction?
So should it relate then to the Historical Preservation Society?
They have a relationship with the active faction. It does not need to be like a good one. They can be opposed. They can be whatever. But you will name them and then describe their relationship with that faction.
Okay. So I think this is a group of younger generations that have never lived on these jellyfishes that have elected to go learn that trade and sort of that life. So they sort of had contacted the Mud Gripper Society as a way to sort of get placement.
Oh, okay, I like that.
So cool.
I am going to 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take BioCell and I'm going to move us into the character space. Ooh. I'm going to describe someone notable from the active faction. What do they do? Where do they hang out? And I'm going to introduce us. I think pushing on a suggestion you made a little bit earlier. I think what I'm going to do this is Marcus Wallwalker Cell. This is the current CEO of BioCell, and this is the natural outgrowth of both Cell and Sons Bioengineering and the Wallwalker family. Eventually there was a marriage. Eventually those two families became one. The business and the family blended, and this family that was a crime family not only faded away, but got absorbed into the very company that they ultimately purchased. And now, like, the inheritor of both of those families is the CEO of this very looming research firm with political ambition. He has pronouns, and he is, I think, I'm trying to think, what do I want his relationship? What do I want him to hang out some? I actually think that he is, you would know him specifically because he never misses a sports game. Like he is in the crowd cheering loudly for every small town sporting event. And outside of that, like, he is enough of a recluse that, like, no one actually knows if he's doing it for political reasons, if he's genuinely just that into sports. Like, he is just, you will never see him miss a sporting event.
Love it. Okay, so I'm going to go to Peace. What does Peace do again?
I believe Peace changes the active faction to one that just landed here. So actually, with that fourth faction we just introduced, you would actually change the Mud Gripper Society to the Mud Gripper Youths and tell us what that looks like.
Wait, that's what the Peace does?
Yeah, the Peace Square changes the active faction to one of the other factions who's not one of the 3 active ones at the moment.
So I think it's like the Mud Gripper Youths sort of like get to the these jellies, decide, no, there's a reason everybody left, and they start trying to sort of make their own changes within those communities.
Oh, a radical progressive wing. We love to see it.
Yeah, subverting the sort of traditionalists.
I really, really like that. And I love that, like, the fact that they are replacing them as the active faction means that they are really, really successful in that really, really quickly in a way that's really compelling. All right, let's do one more action each, and then we'll skip to the generation skip to wrap things up.
Cool. Awesome.
So 5. What do I want to do? Is there anything we haven't done yet? I don't think so. I think we hit all of the pieces.
Yeah, I think we have.
I think I want to. I think I'm actually going to move. Let's see. You're on character. I can move you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to I think moving you to issue feels good. That feels good right before we kind of wrap things up.
Cool. Yeah.
To put an issue on the table, which is and it's an issue related to BioCell. What do I want it to be? BioCell has introduced a very, very radical research development. Previously, their technology, we had said like they plug into jellyfish goo and pull some electrical current out of that, and that powers their stuff. They have experimented with a very, very big, very, very scary thing of what if we plug into the dragon? What if we plug into the actual walls of the actual, like the not just the walls of the city that we're on, but the world that surrounds us?
Mm.
And it is not something that I think when presented has implications to, because I think this is very interesting with the fact that we have the Mud Gripper youths as having become a prominent faction. Like, it's not something that has pedestrian applications. It is something that they roll this out with the intent that this is for other organizations at the level of BioCell. And that idea that they are creating things that can be used by other corporations at that scale, and that they are creating sort of a unified class of super corporation at that scale. Jeff, as well as the Mud Gripper youths, sees that as terrifying.
Love it. Okay, so 2. So, in response to that issue, the sacrament of the sacred flesh has taken upon themselves to destroy BioCell industrial engineering and research conglomerate. And they are essentially, they've become like religious eco-terrorists, forming a sort of insurgency ring to destroy these connections to the flesh wherever it's made. So they're essentially destroying pipelines and stuff like that. And that's what sort of they've become.
That escalated so quickly.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm so into this. This rules. And with that, I think that we don't necessarily need to go card for card, but I think that that's a good stopping point to kind of talk through the generational shift. And if there's any sort of closing things that we want to say happens as the generation closes that maybe foreshadows what comes next, or do we want to leave it at that and sort of leave it lingering with this question of what comes out of all of this?
I think it's sort of like leave it with the lingering questions.
I think that feels good.
I always think that's sort of fascinating, where you kind of have like the gaps open at the end that sort of leave it open for imagination.
I like that. I like that a lot, and I think that the one closing event that I wanna maybe put a thing on as like a cliffhanger. We had said that there was this glimpse of political unrest in the main hub. And the thing that I want to maybe close on as sort of the firecracker, the spark on the bottom of the powder keg, is just the question of what happens when Marcus Wallwalker Cell announces a political campaign on the hub to be run from the jellyfish. And that's I think that's the thing that kind of puts the capstone on all of these things, is this big gigantic thing exploding as this big looming question at the end of this generation.
I love that.
And that's a game. This was so much fun. Oh my God. I love the world that we created.
Weird jellyfish inside world.
weird jellyfish inside world with all sorts of political turmoil. This ruled. I love how much world and history we created in an hour. That was sick.
Well, yeah, and with like 9 cards.
Yeah, this is sick. This game rules. I love this. I love this so much. Thank you for coming on the show and playing this with me. I had the best time.
This is really cool. Thanks for having me.
So, real quick, before we wrap up, where can people find you and your work online?
You can find my game work scattered across the internet on DM's Guild, Star Trek Adventures, iHunt, Arcadia, and you can find me on Twitter as long as that platform is viable at Carlos_Cisco, and that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you again for doing the show. This was such a wonderful experience, and for now, I'm going to throw it over to me in the future so that he can wrap up with the show. Take it, future me. Thanks, past me, and thanks again to Carlos for coming on the show. That game was like weird and visceral and fun and kind of like politically intriguing. It's just, that game fucking ruled, and you were such a joy to play a game with. This was a really great episode, and I was really happy we got to make it happen. Be sure to check the show notes for your own copy of Grasping Nettles, and be sure to follow Carlos on Twitter, as long as that's a thing, at Carlos_Cisco. Then while you're on Twitter, follow us at Party of One Pod. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Party of One Podcast. Find us on TikTok at Party of One Podcast. Find us on Tumblr at Party of One Pod. Subscribe to our newsletter at buttondown.email/Party of One Podcast. And join our Discord community at bit.ly/Party of One Discord. If you enjoy the show, there's a lot of ways to support it. You can support us financially at patreon.com/JeffStormer or Ko-fi.com/JeffStormer. You can give us a nice iTunes review, shout us out to a friend, give us some love on social media. You can buy some Party of One merch at bit.ly/Party of One merch. Or, if you're looking for more great podcast content, you can check out All My Fantasy Children, which is a character creation, storytelling, and world-building podcast that I make with my best friend in the world, Aaron Catano Saez. We take a listener-submitted prompt and spin it into an original fantasy character, populating a shared universe one story at a time. You can also check out Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, which is an actual play about a heartless witch, a cozy house, and the many people making their homes inside. Both of those you can find wherever you get your podcasts. Party of One is, as always, produced and edited by Jeff Stormer and Jen Frank. Music for the show comes from the song Infinite Lives by Mega Ran featuring the D&D Sluggers, and the Party of One logo is by Evan Rowland. If you'd like to inquire about advertising rates, coming on the show as a guest, or about press coverage of the show, you can email me at partyofonepodcast@gmail.com. And unless I am mistaken, that is all we do here. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. Remember to fight the forces of fascism every single day. Remember that self-love and self-care are radical and defiant acts of resistance. And as always, party on, everybody.